Today I'm going to be interviewing Jerome Marcus. Hello, Jerome.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm very good.
Good to be chatting to you. Yeah, good to see you.
Yes.
My normal first question, Jerome, is what do you do?
Now? You mean?
Yeah, what would you?
Now?
Some people say, what's your elevator speech? But I won't say that.
Well, I mean, I've gone through several phases of different aspects of it. What I do now is, because of the pandemic, is I'm a radio presenter.
Cool.
And I was fortunate to actually be offered the job, or first of all, the opportunity to become a radio presenter, by Hayes FM. And I wasn't expecting that at all. No, I live I live not far away from Hayes FM, and I used to actually, having done a lot of things previously. I'm kind of like doing this back to front, really.
No, don't worry.
Having done a lot of work previously with a very well-known cymbal company. I was artist relations manager for that. I got to know very, very many people. So when they used to come into this country, especially the American artists, people like, I'm sure you recognized, people like Bernard Purdie, and in this country, right off the bat, Richard Bailey, right? Okay, drummer for Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow album. He's on that, and he only lives down the road from me anyway.
Yeah.
I used to bring them there, for interviews and whatever they wanted to do, and it's just an opportunity to do different things.
Yeah.
Then I was stopped one day by one of the presenters, Simon, who and we were having a chat about, radio and stuff like that. And he said to me, he intimated whether I wanted to do anything in, radio.
Yeah.
So my instant reaction at that time was, oh, no. You carry on. That's your job, and I do what I do, And obviously I'm a drummer and percussionist. I just said, because I have kind of like a heartful relationship with the media, having come from that background anyway. That I said to him, he said, that's what you're good at doing. That's it, And I think I reiterated this story to you before, after that conversation, I parked the conversation in the back of my mind. And I was driving home just like any other musician would, but I had a busy week. Driving down, traffic jam on the M25. Okay.
Oh, that's a surprise.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
Yeah,
but
right.
M25. Anything.
Yeah, yeah. 2 o'clock in the morning, sitting there, and put on music. Got fed up with that. Put on the radio. Got fed up with that. And what happened was this thought came back to the front of my mind. And I said to myself, you know what? I do have a love for music, right? Okay. I do have a love for, my musical tastes are not channeled, right? Okay. It's kind of like going from that. It's not that. It's actually that.
Mm.
You know, even at my radio shows now, all my radio shows, I make a point of actually starting the radio show with a film soundtrack.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
You know, right? Okay, that's to break up what everybody has heard before.
Yes.
Right. Okay, to get them ready for my show.
Yes.
If I go from whatever it was straight into my show, everybody, you don't capture, you don't get somebody in that frame of mind.
Totally. Yeah,
so that's my idea and thought process behind that. But anyway, that's another story. But carrying on from that, and I said to myself, you know what? It wouldn't do any harm taking a look at this. So I went in there, rang, long story short, rang Simon. He made the appointment. I came in, I saw the station director, and it was a kind of like busy time, you know, for him. He was running up and down. And I told him about my idea for a radio program, you know, which was basically coming from a musician's perspective, that there's all these programs on radio at the moment, okay? And to a certain degree, I have to say, right, there's some radio programs that are out there that I've heard, even on very well-known, let's call it radio stations that are out there, that you can see how they format and program their shows. Yes. They go to the top 20, they take out all these hits, and they say, we've got to play it.
Yes.
Maybe because it's on their playlist. I don't know. Right, okay? Right, okay. That's the formula.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And I said to myself, if I do anything like this, if anything, I would get bored. Right? Because it's not project driven. I'm a very project driven person.
Yeah.
Okay. And most of those projects, from an idea standpoint, all stems from me. So I said to myself, you know, and he said to me, he said, not so many words, right? What can you give me that we haven't got already?
Yes.
You know, so I have said to him, coming from a musician standpoint, that, you know, I'm a musician, I play live. There's umpteen different prize live recordings that never get an airing on radio, you know, from all the bands right across the board. Now, live recordings are usually done by bands for their fans' sake.
Yes.
Right? Okay. For the collectors. Okay. But they never get an airing. Okay. You never get a single release or something like that from a live album.
No.
Very rare. Very, very rare. You know, it does happen, but it's very rare. And, but so I said to him, he said, you know, I just want to have this program. I have an idea in my head. The show will be called Access All Areas, meaning the pass.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. All right. Okay. And I'll explore all the avenues, you know. And I think I said to this before to many people. If you said to me, let's pull a song out of the air. Jerome, can you play me Whole Lots of Love on your show? I'll do that, but I'll find the live version.
Live version, which is obviously interesting.
You know?
It's funny you should say that, because I when I get kids, well, you know, doesn't matter what age, but it's often kids when they're sort of getting into the idea of actually gigging and all that sort of stuff. And you say to them, you don't want to do the song like it is on the record. You want to do it, you know, like a band would do it live, you know, a band like Led Zeppelin. And I always use Whole Lot of Love as an example, you know, to say that middle section where you got the drum break and everything. There wasn't the drum break there. That would have been in Moby Dick or something like that. He would have done that. But that little bit would be rambling through half a dozen old rock and roll and blues numbers, you know, for a few turns. And it was just basically wherever the song was going to go.
Yes.
And you know, that sort of idea of making the song your own, and which is obviously the sort of thing that Zeppelin would have done anyway. You know, this thing they didn't quite know what was going to happen from night to night, which is really,
But
you know,
yeah,
what it's about, really, isn't it? Just
yeah.
trying to keep it.
But don't you find that's missing from a lot of live bands these days?
Yeah, totally. Because you end up, you could have been sitting at home listening to it. You know, okay, the light show is different, but you know, the music's often just the same. You think, well,
Yeah.
why would you do?
Yeah.
Why do that? You know, it's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I hate to say this because they are, you know, they have written brilliant songs, absolutely brilliant songs. But the most boring concert that I ever went to, right, and I don't mind making this public, okay, is the Eagles.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right. Okay. Now, I went to see them live at Wembley. Okay. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not an Eagles fan when I go to see them live.
No.
Because I might as well have stayed home and played the CD.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Because they craft their shows exactly like the record.
Yeah.
Okay. The audience interaction and the in-between banter is that much in comparison to the whole show.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sitting there and it doesn't incite you to get anything else. You know, You go to an Eagles concert as an Eagles fan, right? Yeah. Okay. And I walked away from it and just said, not thinking it was a brilliant concert, right? Okay. Thinking that was a good piece of nostalgia.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, it didn't leave me with anything. I'm sorry, but you know that's basically it. And I love the band to bits. Don't get me wrong.
No. I know exactly what you're getting at, because that's something that you know, I feel totally that when you go to see something, you want to see them doing that sort of creative thing that made, you know, whatever band it is, makes them.
Well, you want to see their artistry.
Exactly. You know. Yeah. And for me, artistry isn't copying something.
No. I mean, it's the spare of the moment. I mean, there's a lot of different bands. Some of them successful in, you know, having this imprinted on vinyl. You know, bands like Led Zeppelin. If you listen to them live, I've got to say this because I've got to survey all the live albums.
Yeah.
I mean, the classic example is Grateful Dead.
Oh, crikey! Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah,
you know what I mean,
totally,
right? Okay, right. Okay, and there's a lot of different bands like that.
Yeah,
and I think, you know, to capture the moment in parentheses, right? It's going to be different. You know, because they've, I think, habitually as listeners, right, to a lot of things, especially if you listen to radio or even if you listen to CDs. You get used to a format of listening, right? So some of the people who design some of their shows for touring, okay, they'll have to say, and I've known people like this, and I've had several conversations with different people. Oh, you must do it like the record.
Yeah.
You must do it like the record. So yes, you do it, but sometimes you can do it like the record, but you kill the soul of it. Yeah, and I'm sure you can, as a musician, you can appreciate that as well.
Oh, absolutely, totally.
You know, and that's basically where I'm actually coming from.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's brilliant because I think it's also I would sort of dare to say that it's also part of the musician's ethos of people of more of our generation to think like that. Whereas a lot of kids now that have come out of, you know, particularly if they've come out of music college, they've actually been sort of spoon-fed a particular way of thinking about things because it's easy to teach. You know, I had this conversation with somebody else actually. In fact, it might have been Tony actually at the beginning of the week, that it's difficult to write lesson plans and a course curriculum around creativity, because really, you know, if you're going to do that, you can just say, well, we're just going to do a couple of crazy things and see what happens. I mean, that could be, you know, if you're going to be doing something crazy, creative. Whereas, of course, if you're writing a curriculum about, you know, he was talking about a jazz course, and you end up putting, well, we're going to do all these scales and all these chords, and it's like, well, that's, yeah, okay, that's all being used, but that's only the starting point. That is the map. What happens then? And of course, you can't write what happens then on a course curriculum, because it's not really possible to do. And and I've seen this a lot, because I come out of the education system, and I see that a lot. And of course, and we're going to go back to your early days about music, but when we started off, that stuff wasn't really available. I mean, you might be able to pick up a little bit of useful stuff from the world of jazz, but everything else was like, well, work it out off the record. You had to use your ear. You had to be creative about how you broke things down. And also, the other big sort of impetus was a lot of the information was coming from blues, blues records.
Yes.
And,
yes.
And again, that's much more effectively, like, I like to think of it as like language based, the phrasing of like a guitar player, and this must be true of the drummers and all the rest of it, is actually to do with what you hear and what you feel and what you're trying to say. And then when you play, you might phrase something like, in my case, it'd be, like Freddie King or BB King type of thing. But you would say it slightly differently, just like you were learning a language. You'd say something, but you'd put your own inflection upon it. Well, you can't get that out of a book.
No,
definitely. And that way of thinking then permeates everything you do about a piece of music. You do a piece, you do something, and you give it a different slant. And I don't see that a lot in the world of education with music.
No, because
in fact, I don't see it hardly at all, to be honest.
Yeah, because everything's theorized.
Yes, and that is also the same thing as what you're talking about radio programs that play to a format. It's the same. It's the same mindset. So it's actually not necessarily to do with music. It's to do with the way that we've been sort of made to think over time.
Yeah, to a certain degree, I couldn't help but let it think that it's the easiest way out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. To format a radio show, you've got a certain amount of time. You've got to play a certain amount of songs. What are you going to fill it with, and what you're going to fill it in between? Now, I'd like to think the way I've been formulating my program, right, tells a story from the beginning to the end.
Yes.
That's why I love doing biographies on my show.
Yeah.
Right. My recent one, the one that's coming out on Saturday, is part 2 of the Carlos Santana series.
Oh, fantastic. My favorite.
Right. Okay. Now, right. Okay.
Okay.
Part one was last week.
Right.
And I went from the day he started
to
the day he finished. Now, it's not an autobiography
no,
in the book.
Yeah.
Right. It's an autobiography of how Santana influenced me.
Great stuff. Right. Well, that's
right.
Right.
Okay. Right. Okay. And that's basically how it is. It goes from the first track that I heard that turned me on to Santana.
Which was what?
I was going into the show, and it's the classic track from the Woodstock album, Soul Sacrifice.
What, Soul Sacrifice?
Right? Yeah, Soul Sacrifice.
Cool.
I was in there, and then I went from, I looked at it, and I was living in Portugal at the time.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, I had 2 Hungarian friends, same level of musical listening tastes.
Yeah.
And, his brother was really way above. He was older. He came back and he said to his brother, and because I was there, he said, "You've got to listen to this," and the story goes, which is a continuance of what's not there, which is not actually on the show, but I'll tell it to you quickly. We put the record on, and yes, there was Jefferson Starship, and there was 10 Years After, and there was Country Joe and the Fish, and there was Richie Havens there.
Yeah. I remember the album very well.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Santana came on.
Yeah.
Right. I went, and I was into rock at that time.
Yeah.
Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath. I was all of that. And I said, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
Which in a way, subliminally, was my introduction into playing percussion.
Yeah.
Right? Because later on, just by pure fluke, I became very tight friends with Carl Perazzo and Raul Recco
Oh,
from
right. Wow.
Santana.
Wow.
You know,
Fantastic.
that was further down the road.
Yeah.
From my previous, what you call it,
Yeah.
job as artist relations
Yeah.
for the
Zildjian.
cymbal company,
Is it Zildjian?
Sabian.
Oh, Sabian.
Right.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, for Sabian. I went from artist relations in the UK to being
Yeah.
artist relations in Europe.
All right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You know, it was a big responsibility, big what you call it, big job to take on because there were so many different territories.
Yeah.
And through that, one of my jobs was to go to the Montreux Jazz Festival.
Oh,
right. At the Montreux Jazz Festival, there are 2 MDs. There used to be 3, but there's 2. Right. The 2 MDs is Quincy Jones and Carlos Santana. Right. Okay, and they managed the whole of the main stage acts.
Wow.
Of the Montreux Jazz Festival.
Wow.
Right. Okay, and it was then. I didn't meet Carlos then. I met him actually at Wembley Arena. Okay, I met him, and we started to chat. Really, 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 really nice guy. But one thing is not the fact that I've met him, right? It's at the Montreux Jazz Festival, I managed to see him work.
Yes.
Right. And that is a very rare thing.
Yes.
Because I had, obviously the passes I needed to go to. I could go to their rehearsal, the dress rehearsals and everything like that. Because Carlos Santana, when he put the Montreux Jazz Festival on, yes, he's got the Santana band, but he's got all these other guests coming on stage. Right, from different parts of the world and stuff like that, which is funnily enough where the second part of my radio series, right, coming up on Saturday, goes from. Because after Soul Sacrifice, right up to date, right, you can see where Santana was going. Number 1, they went through a change of lineup. Number two, from there, they went from a change of direction because he ventured into the pop side of it. He had 2 fairly well-known hits called "Well All Right" and "Winning." Right. Okay. That's from the late 80s.
Yeah, Zabop.
Then
Zabop
and then
one of them, wasn't it? One of the
and then after that, you could see that if you listen to each of the albums, which is a study I had to do this tribute, you can see the transition of the band and the transition of his tastes.
Yes, I totally agree. Because I am, I was a fan of Santana right from when like you're saying, probably the Woodstock film and the Woodstock album. And, he was a great sort of inspiration to me. He was, he took the blues ideas, because a great blues player. But then he just did the blues stuff, so he wasn't really necessarily playing blues, if you see what I mean. But there's also this sort of melting pot with the Peter Green sort of thing and all those sort of...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, what fascinated me, I think, about him and inspired me, because you can imagine, I listen to all sorts of people, but what keeps inspiring me about Santana is he's got this sort of... There's a driving force behind the music. Okay, he is a bit of a hippie character, which I quite like, actually.
Oh yeah. I do.
It's a bit of depth. It adds depth to what he does, and when you listen to him talk about music, again, what we were saying, it doesn't come back to sort of theory. It's all very feeling orientated and what have you. And and he's obviously an extraordinary musician, because I mean, Jaco Pastorius would never have been a friend of somebody who didn't know what he was doing, if you see what I mean. He was, you know what I mean? He used to hang out with Las Vegas and everything. So I mean, this guy was he's really on the but I just like his approach to things, and I was always fascinated by how he could pick up on a trend. So you get something, and then it'd be like he'd be sort of looking. You could tell with certain albums like Borboleta and stuff like that, he was sort of like searching for something, and then suddenly Moonflower will come out, and he'd suddenly right on it. And then it would sort of go off again and sort of dabble here and there, and be sort of finding himself and, finding where he was going now. And then you'd end up with Supernatural or something,
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and I've or again, the tribute album with the Healer album with John Lee Hooker and stuff, which
Yeah, yeah,
is
absolutely.
amazing.
Because the thing about it, Vic, is that uh, a lot of true musicians, all right, okay, if they're the true musicians to themselves and show themselves as the musician,
Yes,
and uh, they don't mind showing their mistakes.
yes,
Somebody might call them mistakes in parentheses
yes,
in public,
yes,
even at the experimental stage. Now, the other artist that did that was David Bowie,
yes,
right? He went through a stage where he went through, what stage was that? Tin Machine,
yes,
right? That was an absolute flop, right?
yes.
Okay, that didn't work for him at all.
No,
But
but
his
interestingly,
I,
I know quite a lot about Bowie. He's my other big influence,
yeah,
along with Hendrix.
yeah,
But
and yeah,
that the Tin Machine thing is interesting because there was a band that he was in earlier,
hmm,
like before he was really famous, or in fact I think it was between the Laughing Gnome and
hmm,
and Space Odyssey, which is a little bit like Space Odyssey, which is a little bit like what was going on with Tin Machine, which is basically he was a singer in front of a
hmm,
band, you know,
hmm, hmm,
um, and uh, and I'm quite intrigued by that. But again, it's a process with him,
hmm, hmm.
like you're saying, and every creative process. Sometimes you have to make the mistake to find where you're going.
Yeah, but the difference here, Vic, is what I admired about these two people is a lot of, I don't know whether it's a British thing or whether it's a music thing in general, that a lot of musicians don't dare go to a project to put it out into public, right? To advertise it as something experimental, right? That they can, that people can appreciate it. Some people might say, well, I won't even go there because maybe they don't have the confidence. But that's where their creativity is drawn them to at that particular time.
Yeah, I
Okay.
completely agree.
You
That's
know?
so totally what I totally believe in this now. And okay, they've got a profile that they have to sort of think about. But I think when you've got somebody like Bowie's a great example of this. He didn't care. He didn't really
Mm,
care because it's almost like he was playing.
no.
It
Yeah.
was almost like he was playing with the whole
Hmm.
concept. Okay, you see it with the manifestations of the characters that he came out with,
Hmm.
but he was also playing with the
Hmm.
music industry and
Hmm.
playing what it meant to be
Yeah.
in the music industry. So he's almost really being more like an artist who just
Well,
happened to
you
make
hit the nail on the head there. You hit the nail on the head there for me, right? Okay, because Bowie, for me, his artistry stretched further than music,
yes,
right? Yeah, right. Okay, it was in painting, right? He didn't mind going down that road. It was in fashion. He didn't mind going down that road either, right?
exactly.
It was in creating new characters for whatever show he had on,
Yeah,
right? Okay, whether it was Ziggy Stardust or Aladdin Sane or even the Thin White Duke.
yes,
Okay, it didn't really matter,
yeah,
right? Okay, he didn't mind going down there. He didn't mind exposing and forming a relationship, with his fans, right up to his sexuality,
yeah,
right? Okay, which is all. Now, if you take all of that and envelop it into music and invite art into it, right? And apply it to all those things, that makes the artist.
yes,
Okay. And that's what I also find in another way with Carlos Santana,
yes,
right? Because he dare go into areas and because he doesn't mind showing the public or his fans that he is himself going through a learning process,
yes,
okay, and being able to interpret his own interpretation with the talent that he has and apply it to whatever he's learned from that, and I mean later on he goes into collaborating with different musicians. And as we know, he's gone through jazz, Latin, reggae, the whole spectrum of genres, which makes him the artist instead of just the musician.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally agree.
And for me, those sort of people, have got who dare go there. I've got a lot of time for. I've got so much time for people like that, because I tell you what, it's not because I learn more about them. It's not that. I learn more about me.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
You learn more about yourself,
right?
Okay, on reflection. And you're thinking, how are we going to go with all it? Now, in terms of this interview, right, okay, that's where it was when it came to radio. Now, let's go into present day. Now, we started out by going right up to the beginning. Now, now that you find out where I am now, and the way of thinking and all the lessons I've learned, all right, to get me up to where I am now. If you go right up to the very beginning, from the days of broken chopsticks.
Okay. Let's do this then, because normally we get all this done at the beginning. But that was brilliant. Can I just say what you said about discovering about yourself by listening to other people? Seeing about them. This is exactly the principle behind what I'm doing with this.
Yeah.
I always say to people, I do this because I'm nosy. But it's actually the fact that if people listen to other people's stories, they learn about themselves and their potentiality, because it shines a light on people, to themselves. Right. So right back to the beginning. Let's go back to you told me you were in Singapore.
Yes,
as a young lad.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And
so tell me what was going on with the chopsticks then, Jerome?
Well, the chopsticks. What actually happened there was that we were well-to-do, right? Okay, and we had servants, we had a cook, a gardener, and everything else. And the cook used to notice and made a complaint to my mother that I kept on breaking all the chopsticks in the house, right? Okay, I would go to a certain drawer because I knew that's where they were.
Yeah.
And whilst the cook was cooking, I used to sit on the kitchen floor, right? Okay, take out all the pots and pans, so that I can beat on it and have it on different sounds, right? Didn't have any idea what I could do, but I just loved it, And ended up breaking all the chopsticks. So we then invested into cheapest chopsticks, and all the price chopsticks we used for eating, and all the cheapest chopsticks were given to me. Right?
Yeah.
My granddad on my mum's side found out that I had a passion for drumming. And this is now getting to the age of 6. Okay. I did all of that when I was around about 3.5, 4, as far as I can remember.
Mm.
And then by the time I got to 6, my granddad saw that I had an aptitude towards drumming, and he bought me for my birthday present a small drum kit, right? Okay, it was I can remember, it's a Rossini kit. It was an Italian kit, green sparkle. I would call it.
That sounds pretty cool.
Right. Okay. 20-inch bass drum, one tom on the top, one snare drum, no hi-hat, one cymbal on the right-hand side. And I used to watch this television program on television, which was on, and I just fell in love with the drummer that was in, on that show, and he used to copy everything that was on that he used to do. Didn't have any students or anything. And then my dad also was a musician. He was a saxophone player. He was an alto sax and tenor sax player in the big band, right? Okay. And there's another story to tell, but I won't go there right now. But he was the one, oddly enough, being a musician, that didn't encourage me to become a musician.
Ah,
Oddly, because he was a
well,
musician, you
yeah,
know.
I think
Yeah,
actually
no,
that's not uncommon.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know. I don't know whether it was a generation thing, but he didn't encourage me to do it.
No.
But at that time, I fell in love with it so much that my determination just, what do you call it, overwhelmed whatever he was thinking.
Mm. Yeah,
And
the Cornish have got a saying of the cobbler's children have no shoes, which means
mm,
they don't necessarily do what, you know, if your dad does
yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah,
you're not
yeah,
necessarily going to benefit from that type of thing.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, from there, what actually happened was that I carried on. I went it up, went to school, joined the school band. This is whilst I was still in Singapore. I left Singapore when I was 12. We headed for Portugal because Singapore being a small island at that time, the retiring age, for, oddly enough, was 55.
Right.
Right, okay? This is going back all those years back because it was a very small island. It only had 2.5 million people on it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you know, whereas now I think it's about 7, you know, right? Just ridiculous in an island, which was, just imagine that. I mean, it's much bigger now because they reclaimed a lot of land
Yeah.
from the sea. And the shape of Singapore geographically looks completely different now than it was
Right.
then.
Right.
But right then, there was 2.5 million people living on a square mileage of 22.5 square miles.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And everybody lived that way. You know, there wasn't anybody living that way.
No.
You know? So I moved to Portugal, which is where I met those Portuguese friends. You know, we were chatting earlier on. You know, that's how I got into music. You know, that's how I discovered Led Zeppelin and everything else, which was my which became a passion. That's my introduction into rock and stuff like that, and carried on. And then I was there for about 3 years. My father couldn't see a future in our education in Portugal because of the nature of the country. I mean, you know, there were people there that couldn't even sign their names, right? Because most of them were farmers, you know, at that time. So we decided to move to the UK. When I moved to the UK, I went to Plymouth.
Plymouth I know well, actually.
Yeah. That's where I stayed for until I was, when did I move to London? When I was about, I moved there when I was just about 14, 15.
Right.
Stayed there all that time. And then I moved to London when I was about 10 years after that. You know, 10
Plymouth
years after
is an unusual choice for a place to go.
Well, no, only because we had relatives there.
Ah, right. Okay.
You know, we had relatives there.
Right.
And that's the only place, you know, that's the only reason why we went there, you know. And in Singapore, with Asian families, we were very family orientated, you know, and that's the reason why we went there, you know. So
I mean, it was an interesting place, Plymouth. I mean, because, you know, I lived in Cornwall. So if you wanted to go shopping, you went to Plymouth. I mean, nowadays you can go to
yeah. Whereabouts in Cornwall?
Sorry, in North Cornwall, Weybridge I was in. Near
yeah, I know Weybridge, yeah.
My sister and brother are still there. But yeah, it's definitely a place I love. Absolutely love it.
So from there, I decided to go there, went to school there, joined the school band, played the Plymouth Guildhall, which at the end, I ended up watching bands like Uriah Heep, Golden Earring, lots of different things at the Plymouth Guildhall. But I played with the school band. Then I played with another school band with this big school out there called Marjons, where the drummer felt ill, and I had to actually sit in, and I had 3 days to learn Sgt. Pepper's.
Oh, right.
Right, okay. You know, the song, and the whole band knew it, but the drummer felt ill, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So they said, how the hell are we going to do this? We've got this all scheduled. Parents are coming over and what have you. So word got down, usual thing, right? Okay. And the principal came to see me and they said they need somebody to play drums, at this thing. And it caught me completely by surprise. I had 3 days to rehearse the songs, right? So needless to say, I played Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band's Beatles album to death.
Yes.
Right, right. At the time, because I couldn't read.
No.
Right, everything was done by ear.
Yes. Yes.
So I had to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
Ended up doing it. Got the gig. What have you? They said, if we ever get stuck like that again, am I available? Which was great. Never got called again, but it was nice to know. And then from there, I carried on. Had my first school band. After I left school, I formed another band, like you do, in other bands, and joined several high-powered local Plymouth bands. Got right up to the top with me as a drummer.
Yeah.
And then it got to the stage, and this is a funny story, which I'll tell you. When I first started, there was a lineup of a band that I used to have, right? Okay, called Crazy Feeling, right? And what had actually happened was, as things go on, you have musical disputes in bands and stuff like that. Bands split up, okay? 5 years down the road, I meet up with the other guy and said, "Oh, same old conversation. Oh, wasn't it great that we had that band, what have you?" He said, "Well, I'm putting another band together and let's see how we can do this." I said, "Oh, that's fine." He said, I'm at loose end. I'm game for it." Lo and behold, when we came to rehearsal, the lineup of that band was exactly the same as the lineup of the other band, right? Okay. Just by pure coincidence.
Weird.
Okay. Right. Okay. And we just came back. So we decided to call it Crazy Feeling. We just did that. And then that's when the life crisis changed for me.
Right.
It did. Because a lot of people in Plymouth, don't get me wrong, some great musicians in Plymouth. And some of those musicians I played with are still playing today,
Yes.
Back then. But the only thing at that age, I was thinking, where am I going?
Yeah.
Right? 5 years ago, I'm playing with this band.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, after that, we split. 5 years later, I'm joining the same band again.
Yes.
It's as though time stood still.
Yes.
So I had to take the gamble and say, where am I going forward? There were several different, what ultimately made my decision to come to London was there was a competition by the New Musical Express, Melody Maker. Right, okay, right, okay. And the heats were being held in Plymouth. And I had got in there, and at that time, I was referred to as the young Phil Seaman.
Oh, right.
Right. And I got auditioned to actually do that. Long story short, I didn't make the next stage of the whole thing, but I became headlines of the thing. I got to the next heat, but I didn't didn't go further than that.
Yeah.
So from there, I set myself the question. I had, by the way, I had already made up my mind. This is where I was going to go route-wise. Came to Plymouth, and then from Plymouth, I just said, and I was going out with my wife at that time, and this going back, my God, coming up nearly 40 years ago now, and she said, I said to myself, I've got to go to London. I've got to give you a choice. You can either come with me, and if you come with me, that's great. If you don't, I'll understand. Right? Okay. She made the decision and decided to take a gamble because of what she was doing at the time. She was working as a radiotherapist treating cancer.
Right.
And I just said, because it wouldn't be fair for me to say, look, you either come with me or not, or So I had to get, because she was career led, Lent as well. So she said, well, the only way she could go forward from
Yes.
Plymouth was to
Yeah.
come to London.
Yeah.
So by coincidence, both of our thought patterns matched,
Yes.
right? Now, by this time, we moved to London, and I had to start from scratch again. And I met bands, over the years, that at that time, that moved me forward. In actual fact, the first band that I actually played for, which was a blues band, and the blues band was Johnny Marr's blues band.
God.
Right? Okay, and I joined that band. Right? Okay, and we did everything. From gigs. We played the venue in London, that level. Right? We were on nationwide television. Right. Okay. And, there was a lot of things going on at that time. So from there, we carried on, we moved ahead, and we got back. And unfortunately, I got ripped off big time in the big business. Tell me a musician who hasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Went through that patch. Right. Okay. And basically what actually happened, was after all of that happened, right? Okay, and I won't go into that. It's a
No.
It's a
No.
yeah. That's in the past now. But at the part, at the time, my attitude was, if this is what the music business has got to offer me right now, they can keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and lo and behold, at that particular time, after that, I actually put my sticks down, right? Because it hurt me so badly, whether naively or anything else. And I know everybody's been through it, but at the time, on a personal level, it really, really, what do you call it? Struck a sore wound, purely because of the amount of work I put into getting to that point.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Where we were going to break.
Yes.
Okay. By having a record contract.
Yes.
But it wasn't to be. So we moved ahead, and I then joined Sabian Cymbals. Right. Okay. And as it was, I didn't know what I was going to do then. I didn't actually learn another craft. All I had in my head was a single-minded direction of becoming a musician. Okay. I didn't know anything else. And then I opened up the local paper, and it always happens. The same thing happened when I bought my new car. The same thing happened with this job, right? I opened the local paper, and as soon as I opened it, there was an advert in the paper saying, Arbiter Group PLC needs staff, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Saw the address. The address was walking distance from my house.
Yes.
So I went for the interview, got the interview, and started work the following week.
Yes.
I was working in the warehouse, and then I worked from there, and over the next 2, maybe even 3 years, I worked from the warehouse and worked up to the offices to become artist relations for Remo drums.
Right.
Heads,
yeah.
Right. Because that's who they were distributing. And when we had the distribution contract for Sabian,
yeah,
I was introduced to the Canadian bosses at Sabian, and they picked me up in a finger snap.
Yeah.
And I carried that on, and the rest kind of like is history, and that would be another thing. You're right. Okay. So if I brought you to that now, that would have been back in, my goodness, 1993. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I have to skip a big part of that and bring you right up to the millennium now. Right. Okay. Because that's another story in itself. So right up to the millennium, came back and sat down, and I said to myself, what do you call it? uh, and I had several different mentors within the business, one of which, I have to mention his name because he's still a friend today, what do you call it, and still a huge mentor. It's a guy called Dom Famularo, right? Okay. He is a tuition. He's a motivator, right? Okay. But he is one of the largest drum clinicians in the world, right? At the moment. He travels the world just doing this, And the other person who was my mentor was, funny enough, Vic Firth himself from Vic Firth.
Right, yeah, this drumsticks guy,
yeah, Vic Firth himself, right? Those were the two people that were mainly sort of like close to my heart, and Dom said, you know what? He just said, and I was at a crossroads. He just said, well, I'm doing this, but I want to do this.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. He said, what are you serving at the moment? Look at your personal circumstances. He said, you've got to pay bills. You've got to do this and what have you.
Yeah.
You can do all the artistry stuff in between.
Yeah.
Right. But if you've got a mortgage gone down your head, he said, now don't take that gamble now, is what he said. Right. So he just said, he said, you may have the love there, but don't take the gamble.
Right.
So I took his advice and said to him, so he said, well, he said, I don't think I'm cut out for all this corporate stuff and what have you. He said, Jerome, you don't have to get cut out for it. It's all to do with your thought pattern, right? And how you roll things out.
Yeah.
You don't have to. And he said, you are a very creative person. You're a very creative minded person.
Yeah.
But have you ever thought of doing business creatively? And I had to think, I had to really think, He said, have you ever thought of being creative in business?
Yeah.
Okay. But still associated with music.
Yes.
So I had to think about it. And I said, you know what? He's got a point there. The thing about it was that I was being schooled in a regime of being corporate.
Yes. That's
right.
Interesting. Which is actually, you saying that, again, it goes back to our conversation earlier about, artistry. You're talking about Santana and Bowie and everything, and about the fact that they managed to find something over and above the way that the normal sort of, about musicians being creative and not doing what everybody else does type of thing, right? Which is a similar thing you're saying there. You could do business, but you can be creative about that. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it because everybody else did it that way type of vibe.
Yeah. But the first thing I had to do was realize it.
Yes.
Right. If I didn't realize it, it would haunt me.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And that's where I'm thankful to Dom for opening up that window for me to look out, to say, look, take a look at this, and took a look at it intently.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you'll be able to find your solution. He didn't tell me what it was.
No,
he left me to do it.
Yeah.
He left me to do it. And I did find the solution at the end.
Yeah.
So from there, I ended up doing it, which brings you up to just gone past 2000, just at the beginning of 2000, after the millennium, where Arbiter as a distributor went bust. Right? Arbiter reputably was the biggest distributor for Fender guitars in the UK.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And they just went completely bust.
Yeah.
And the first people to pick me up was Sabian, Sabian cymbals in Canada.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't have an office here.
No.
They had an office in Canada. And they said, can you be the representative for Europe at that time? Right. Okay. Because we're forecasting everything that's there. I was being headhunted by two companies, one by Sabian and one by Vic Firth himself. There's two different companies, to become exactly the same thing. The guy who was at Vic Firth, Marco, at the artist relations things, he wanted me desperately to join the company. Okay. And long story short, when the artist relations for Sabian got to him, and the words to him was, what do you call it? If you ain't fast, you're last.
Yes.
So saying that in business speak, that they managed to get me and Vic Firth didn't.
Yeah.
So I stayed with them until 2010. 2010 was when I got let go from Sabian Cymbals because of the credit crunch. Right, a lot of there was a what's called a worldwide recession. Right, okay, and I was one of the casualties. And at that time, if it wasn't for my wife, I don't know what I'd be doing now, because all this time during this trauma for quite a number of years, and I'll go back a little bit in a minute to tell you what actually happened, but music-wise. But just to bring you up to date, I then came away, and my wife told me, now you can do whatever you want. And then, it's the same old thing, because you get the same old used to thing. Well, what's going to pay this bills? What's going to pay that bills? And what's going to do this and what have you? She said, the bills are all sorted. We'll be fine. Right. Okay. And, and all that sort of stuff. But during this time, right up to that point, I have to go back. If not, I'll forget it. Back in 1999, between 1999 and 2000, I was invited to play and be the drummer. There were several drummers after him, but I ended up being the last drummer of the lineup for the suite.
Oh,
right. And I ended up playing with Brian Connolly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that is what actually happened during that period. It's like, and every Christmas we were on the Slade tour.
Yeah.
But
that was a bit of a blast, wasn't it?
Oh, I'm telling you, it's one of the best laughable times I can ever recall. Because jokes were flying around.
I could imagine.
We were pulling.
Who else was on the tour? I was going to say not Gary Glitter, I hope.
No.
A bit late in the day, I guess, for him, wasn't it?
Funnily enough, the last band, there was 3 people on that tour every single year. There was the suite. At that time, it was BC Suite, which is Brian Connolly's suite.
Right. So was there another one, presumably?
It's called AS Suite, Andy Scott Suite.
Right.
Right, okay. But we had the better of the profile purely because we were the band that actually... BC Suite went out and played all the hits.
Yeah.
AS Suite went out and played all Andy's compositions, plus some of the hits.
Right.
Okay, and that's the difference. But because we were dedicated to that, we got better exposure than he did.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong; both bands had the ability to do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of popularity,
was there some sort of contractual thing that stopped? That made it that one band did one sort of thing and another band did another?
What, name-wise?
Well, no, set-wise. Because sometimes you
because the thing is that they had to differentiate between the two bands.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right, okay. And Andy didn't want to become what we were, and we didn't want to become what Andy did.
No,
right?
That makes sense, yeah.
Now, nobody could use the name The Suite.
No. So that's what I'm getting at. Yeah, there was some, okay.
Because it belonged to Chin and Chapman.
Yes. I actually met Nicky Chin, I think it was. Is it Nicky Chin? Yeah. And unusual guy.
Yeah. And that was the whole reason why. And I was right up to the Millennium, because we actually played at the Millennium. We were on television, actually.
Oh, right.
Right on the day of the Millennium. And I remember, if you can remember, or you can find a show out there, I'm still trying to find it. the day, I can't remember which channel either. I think it might have been ITV. Broadcasted it live, and the person who introduced us on was Lenny Henry.
Right.
Okay, Lenny Henry introduced us on. There was a massive screen behind us, which was a television screen, and we played in front of 66,000 people, okay, in Wales.
Right.
Okay. And it was massive. My jaw hit the floor when I hit the stage.
Yeah.
Because I've never seen, that's the biggest crowd I've ever played to. Okay. And believe you me, when you walk on the stage with that many people, when they cheer, okay, it's just like a tidal wave hits you, you know? And and I wasn't expecting it.
No.
Okay. But and then it brings me up to date. I had to reference that story, but bringing it up to date, we're back into 2010. I then went down and I was invited by Sam Kelly.
Yes.
To play, to come down the pub and jam, because I've known Sam for a long, long time. In my previous days, prior to me joining, that's all those years back. What do you call it? That's prior to me dropping sticks, basically.
Yes.
I've always played now and again, because once you've got it, it never goes away, right? Okay, but I never played in bands and stuff.
Yes.
And then he asked me to go to a gig, and it was down in Kingston. And we were jamming there, and I can remember there was Spy Austin, Paul Jobson, LeBurn, Maddox, right? Okay, on guitar, Sam Kelly, and myself. That was the first gig ever. And after that, and little did I know, he just came down to do that. And in typical Sam Kelly fashion, Sam's always reinventing.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And experimenting different lineups.
Yeah.
Not long after that, he rang up and he just said, "Look, I want to try out this outfit, that we had down there." By which time they changed the guitarist. LeBurn went off and did something else, and we had Tony Kunter come in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that became the lineup.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And that's how Sam Kelly Station House started, as far as I'm concerned. It's been going for a long time, but that particular lineup is since,
that's good. That's good. It's good. Yeah.
So that's basically the rest of it is history, as they say.
Yes. See, what I like about that story is that you were able to sort of take opportunities that sort of presented themselves well, and weirdly, like you're saying, sometimes these opportunities seem to come about in such a peculiar way. Like, and again, this is a theme that does actually happen quite a lot in these interviews, where people go, I was in this place and I went around a corner and bumped into this guy I hadn't seen for 20 years or whatever it is, for 10 years or whatever. And he said, "Oh, that's really strange. We're short of a guitar player," or whatever. And then suddenly he ends up playing in, working for somebody that basically makes, this the new, that life opens up in that particular way, by chance. And I like those stories, because they are so bizarre. And they happen so often in the story arc of people.
Now, the thing is, Vic, that I know some people may criticize, the life of a musician, right? Okay. Apart from the conventional facts that people get married, they go from school, they get a decent job, they get married, they have kids and stuff like that, from that perspective. But, if you're artistically lent, there is a different path that is carved for you. a path that is not conventional,
Exactly.
a path that you create yourself,
Yeah.
that you actually walk down and you're responsible for. Nobody else is responsible for it but yourself. And I think that for me, you know, I've been lucky enough along the way to heed on my, again, I'll go back to saying my father, right? Okay. You know, from the conversations we used to actually have, you know, and at that time, at that very, very young age, he just said, I'm going to say this now. All I want you to do is remember it, because what I'm going to tell you is won't make any sense to you now. Right. Okay. And further down the line, you know, you go through something and you say, I get it now. Right. I do get where you were coming from. You know, there's all of that, you know, that comes in there. And, you know, it's the funny thing about it is that what it's taught me now, right? Okay. And now we're in 2020. Okay. What it's taught me now, and it's still teaching me. And if you're still learning, right? Okay. You're still creating is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's in whatever sense possible. Now, for me, in terms of opportunity, in terms of music, everything that I have done, even right up to radio, has involved music. You know, everything, you know, from the time I left school to date. Now, I consider myself lucky, don't get me wrong, to be able to do that. I didn't have to diversify myself. I did a little bit, and I ended up going out I took 8 months out, becoming a double glazing salesman at some point, you know, and we've done other things apart from it just to earn a living, like couriering and stuff like that, you know. But you know, I didn't shift from my main focus.
No, exactly.
Right. Okay. At this moment in time, everybody, without exception, in the music business is going through a hard time.
Yes.
Right. Everybody is going through it. But one thing I have learned to actually do is to lean on your talents, because your talents, there's some people who, because they feel that they're a certain age, that's it.
Yeah.
Right. They can't, you know, you know, that's it. They can't go any further now. Yeah. Right. Okay. And some of them is through laziness. Now, fortunately, my mind is still susceptible to learning. And I think no matter what age you are, whether, you know, you're in your 70s or if you're 80s, if you allow your head to learn,
yes,
right, you're still living.
Yes.
You know, rather than saying, I'm too old for that.
Yeah.
Right? I can't do anything. You're doing it not to serve your pocket, you're doing it to serve your soul.
Yes.
Right? Okay. If you serve your soul, you serve your life.
Yeah, totally.
You know, right? Okay. So that's the upbringing that I came from, which came from my father. Yeah. And he said, that is the most important thing, right? Never be afraid of moving forward for anything else. Never be afraid of experimenting. Never be afraid of failure. All right? Because failure, what you call it, teaches you success. Right? Okay. The richest person in the world, this is how he used to reiterate this to me. The richest person in the world is the person that's failed the most.
Great stuff. Brilliant.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, and you know, and that is one of the things, you know, a lot of people saying, oh, failed. Oh, I mustn't let anybody know I failed. Oh, I mustn't do.
The whole
you know what I mean?
Predicated on that now. Yeah, totally, isn't it?
You know,
the education system works is predicated on the fact that you can't fail. And
yeah,
you need those things so you can look at, because you learn more from where it went wrong.
Seriously. Yes, exactly.
And sometimes when things go right, you don't know why they went right. That's
yes. Yeah. And I think when you don't know when things are right, is because you've taken note of things that were wrong.
Yes.
It's a subliminal thing.
Yes, it is.
It's something that I've learned, right? Okay. Excuse me. But it's one of those things that you cannot teach anybody, right? Okay. And I only wish schools nowadays would teach people that failure is a good thing,
Yes.
you know, rather than being, what's the word for it? Peer pressured,
Yes.
right? Okay, into saying you can only do this way, you can only do this way, and what people do is they cane themselves. There's a difference between caning yourself to do something and training yourself to do something. You know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and for me, that has always been the key. Now, we're not in the best of times at the moment.
No.
Any musician,
No.
right? But that doesn't mean what you've done is worthless.
No.
Okay, how do you diversify, right, from what you have to do? Because the thing is, wherever you are in the music business, you have to go forward, right? You cannot, there comes a point where you can't go forward with the same old.
No.
You can love what you do, right? Okay, you can love the genre of music you're playing. You can love your playing, but you cannot continue to do it because you'll be left behind.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, you have to go along to try and find out. So at this moment in time, I can see somebody asked me this question, funny enough, where do you see music going now that we're into this COVID-19 format? And I said to them, I can see people missing where they're going to be playing. There's going to be people that are desperate to go out to play, right? And because that's all they know what to do. That's the only way they've learned how to make money, right? Okay. That's the only way they can actually do that. But I said to themselves, haven't they stopped? Can't they actually stop by saying, right, okay, because to me, when you do something like that, that's where your talent stops.
Yes.
Right, okay. But your talent's worth more than that.
Yes.
Right, okay. Where do you go with it? So ask questions outside of that and you find the solution.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Right.
You know,
I must say, because I've got an eye on the time here as well, but
yeah,
what you've just said there completely sums up what I'm actually doing on the sort of Patreon thing. I've got this sort of mentoring thing, and it's sort of I've put it down as guitar tutors, but it's actually musicians, you know, and I've done some sort of interviews with people about, you know, they've sort of said what their problems are and we've spoken about it, and sort of, you know, you come out of this. But what you're saying there is totally the point, that if you're just fixed and you're waiting, for instance, for everything to go back to normal, you're missing an opportunity. You're
absolutely
missing an opportunity to actually make something amazing happen, right? We don't know what that amazing thing is, but it's what that amazing thing is for you. You know, something else that you a challenge, and for you to sort of focus again and draw everything back in that you've got and assess, and then think, hang on a minute, there's this, you know. So that was such a brilliant talk, and there's such a lot of stuff there, Jerome. Really good. Now, your radio program and everything.
Yes.
If you send me the details, I'll put them in the show notes, because normally when people say things, you know, if I ever listen to a podcast, I'm often in the car. I can't write things down. So if you give us the details of how people can reach you on the show or how they can find you, that would be brilliant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. At this moment, well, do you want me to do it on air?
Well,
right.
What might be better, you'll need to send me the details probably, so I'll put it in the show notes.
Yes.
Yeah, if that's all right. And that was really good. A really fascinating talk, Jerome.
Well, the radio show is Hayes FM.
Yeah, so we can search.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I'll send you all the details.
Yeah.
But in brief, it's www.hayesfm.co.uk.
Yeah.
The program is Access All Areas.
Yeah.
And it's on every Saturday between 7 and 9.
Right.
It goes out live.
Right.
If people miss that, and if they join my Access All Areas Facebook page,
right,
okay, I actually upload the show.
Fantastic.
On Mixcloud, so they can catch up with it at their leisure.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. All right, that's really good. Anyway, Jerome, that's really great to talk.
Thank you so much, man.
That's all right, and speak to you soon. That was great fun. Good talking to Jerome. So until I see you next time, all the best.